Thank you.
So I want to thank my friends from the House and from the Senate for being here today. We have a lawless administration. Let's just all admit it. When Trump was president, the border was pretty secure. We have a new president, the border is unsecure. It wasn't the laws didn't change. We have the exact same laws. We have an administration that has decided not to enforce the law. So we have drugs all across the country. We have criminals. We have terrorists. And we had Director Wray come and testify. He testified in Homeland Security when I asked him a question. And Mayorkas was sitting right next to him. As a result of an open southern border, do we have terror cells in this country? And he said yes. I think every one of us care about our families. Every one of us cares about our families. I mean, do we want terrorists in our country? Do we want more crime in our country? Do we want more drugs in our country? And this administration is doing it. They're doing it each and every day. So what we have to do is we have to take every opportunity we can to say we are not going to pass additional legislation for whatever form, whether it's funding, whether it's Ukraine aid, whatever it is, until we get this border secure. And the only way we're going to get the border secure, because we have a lawless administration, is we've got to tie what the administration wants, whether it's Ukraine aid or funding, to a real secure border, to a border that goes down to the number of people crossing and staying is down to where it was when Trump was president. We can all do this. Now, we're also talking about, as you know, we're talking about funding. Let's look at what we did in the omnibus a little over a year ago. And this is why people in the country are furious with us. They're furious with Congress over spending. We have $34 trillion debt. We added $1 trillion of debt, right, just since September. Our GDP is growing slower than our debt growth. It's not sustainable. We're not going to get inflation down. We're not going to get interest rates down. None of this is coming down. But here's an example of some things that were in last year's omnibus bill. $3.52 or $3.62 million for the Michelle Obama Trail in Georgia. Now, if you go to my state, you think people say, oh, that was a good expenditure. How about $1.8 million to pay for the bus fare of people in Olympia, Washington, so they don't have to pay bus fare? You think people in Florida think that was good spending? $7 million for staircases in the city of the fixed staircase in the city of Pittsburgh. Why should we be funding that at the federal level? $2.5 million for a Chinatown arts building in San Francisco. People are furious with this stuff. So why don't we start doing our job? Secure our border, and we can balance our budget. We do it personally. I did when I was governor for 8 straight years, even though I walked in with a big budget deficit. We ought to start doing the exact same thing here. Let's live within our means. Let's start solving the problems of this country. One of the biggest problems is an open southern border. Now we're going to have Bob Good here.
Rosen, Senator Scott, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Dalton, the 350th Spectrum Warfare Wing, activated in 2021, will be a critical player in the fight against Communist China. They currently have over 330 positions to fill that they can't because they don't have the mission space to allow these people to work. So can you tell me what you're going to do to rectify that?
Senator, thank you so much for the call last week, and thank you for hosting the Spectrum Wing, as well as your considerable support from the state of Florida for space operations. As we discussed, Senator, given the contested operating environment that we find ourselves in, and certainly would find ourselves in a conflict with the PRC, it's absolutely critical that we are both have.
Can I stop you just for a second?
Yep.
Can you just give me, what are you going to do to fix it? That's one issue. That's
Senator,
all I really care about.
You have my commitment to dig into the particulars if confirmed, and to work with you on a pathway forward.
Okay. Can we just go back? When you were Undersecretary of Homeland Security, did you feel responsible for the border?
I did, Senator, and that's why I've made repeated visits there.
So did you ever tell Secretary Mayorkas that he was doing a crappy job?
No, Senator.
So does it bother you that 70,000 people are dying of fentanyl overdose in the country?
It does, very much.
What'd you do? You sold off property. You didn't build the wall. We got terrorists come across our country. We got criminals across our country. We have 8 million people coming unvetted. You're the Undersecretary of Homeland Security. It's the biggest issue in my state. And I can't imagine what it's like in Texas or Arizona right now. You're the Undersecretary, and I've not heard one thing you say today that you took any responsibility for what happened.
Senator, since I have been Assistant Secretary for Homeland Defense and Hemispheric Affairs, the Secretary of Defense has authorized 2,500 National Guard personnel year over year in support of DHS at the southwest border. He has also authorized 1,500 active duty personnel
Go through the
as
numbers.
a surge layer.
Nothing happened. I mean, if like, I'm a business guy. If in business, if it didn't work, you do it, you change something. The numbers are not the numbers aren't going down. You're responsible for this. You are the undersecretary and you're responsible, and nothing got better.
Senator, it's the responsibility of the Department of Homeland Security for border security.
Okay, so what's your responsibility? Did you have none?
I receive requests from the Department of Homeland Security on how they need the Department of Defense to support them, and I provide options to the Secretary of Defense on pathways that are legal, that are appropriate per posse comitatus for our forces, and do not negatively impact training and readiness.
But you never told Mayorkas, you never told anybody else that they weren't doing their job.
No, Senator.
Why not? I mean, you look at the numbers just like we do. You got a family. You care about your family.
I do very much.
Yeah. I mean, so why wouldn't you say something?
Senator, I have attended many meetings internal to the department in the interagency focused on what is happening at the southwest border. I have routinely visited there. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, was down in San Diego, where unfortunately we see a number of special interest migrants coming through the border. I have taken this incredibly seriously in my role. There are limits to what I can do per statute from the Department of Defense on border security.
You didn't say anything. I mean, you said you never said, this is not working.
Senator, it is not within my purview to make changes to our overall border security policy. That falls to the Department of Homeland Security.
So, Undersecretary of Homeland Defense, right?
Assistant Secretary of Homeland Defense and Hemispheric Affairs.
I mean, it's just, look at the numbers. Look at the criminals, the terrorists, the drugs, and then like, do you feel a responsibility to give us information? And then it took forever to even get information on what you were selling off.
Senator,
Didn't that bother you?
If I may on that point, it does bother me because I take my responsibilities as a Senate confirmed official very seriously. I am disappointed that we have not met the expectations clearly of this body or of Congress. We are a learning organization at the Department of Defense, and you have my commitment going forward in this role and if confirmed as Undersecretary of the Air Force to do better, to provide timely and accurate information when Congress requests it.
Thanks.
Your Honor, newspapers have called this a plea deal. It should be called the plea deal of the century. Mr. Littlejohn abused his position of trust, stole personal financial data, released that data intentionally and with malice to harm Americans, including me and my family, and clearly violated the law and disclosed the private tax and financial information of thousands of Americans. Thousands. Yet today he will escape accountability for his deeds in all but a single case. He is pleading guilty to just one violation out of thousands. And he will be punished for just one violation, not thousands. The United States Department of Justice acknowledges that I'm a victim of Mr. Littlejohn's actions and generously offered me the opportunity to give a victim impact statement. Unfortunately, there are more victims of this crime than can fit in the courtroom today. Donald Trump, Elon Musk, Ken Griffin, the list is long. All attacked for political purposes because they are wealthy or Republican or both. All attacked for political purposes that coincide with the political desires of the Biden administration. But there are more victims than just those named in this case. In a broad sense, every American is a victim here. Why? Because this case is part of the ongoing and dangerous corruption of the justice system at the federal level. The ugly truth is Mr. Littlejohn is getting the sweetheart deal because his crimes advance Joe Biden's political agenda. This cynical plea deal is further proof that under Attorney General Merrick Garland, the Biden Justice Department has become politicized to attack the regime's enemies and protect its friends. The Attorney General's message to all Americans in this case is clear and dangerous. Harass the opposition into silence, embarrass enemies, provide ammo for campaign attacks, and if you get caught, no problem. The Biden Justice Department takes care of its friends. The evidence is both individual and widespread. To pick one specific example, look at Kevin Kleinsmith. He is the FBI attorney who admitted falsifying evidence to fuel that bogus Russian election interference investigation against President Trump. Mr. Kleinsmith never saw a day behind bars for his crime. More generally, how many defund the police rioters face federal charges from the Biden Justice Department? So let's take a closer look at Mr. Littlejohn's crimes. In this case, a liberal propaganda operation called ProPublica received stolen goods from Mr. Littlejohn and used those stolen goods for political purposes. Political purposes identical to Joe Biden's political purposes. Now, my mom told me growing up that receiving stolen goods was a crime. I guess she missed the political exception to the rule. If anybody wonders whether the Biden Justice Department is really capable of naked political partisanship, talk to the people at Project Veritas. In a dispute over reporting on the diary of the president's daughter, Project Veritas was not only subject to a Biden Justice Department criminal investigation, its leaders were hit with a pre-dawn FBI raid. How is what Project Veritas is accused of any different than what ProPublica did? Why isn't ProPublica facing criminal prosecution? Why didn't they get hit with a pre-dawn FBI raid? It would be instructive to ask Attorney General Garland that question, but we all know the answer. Joe Biden's enemies get the SWAT team, his friends get the sweetheart deal. After all, this is a president who just bragged in a major campaign speech that he knows how to, quote, wield power. And responsibility for the corruption of the Biden Justice Department rests far above those sitting at the prosecutor's table. That's why I asked Attorney General Garland to appear in court today. As we can all see, he declined. A Gallup poll this month found just 28% of Americans are satisfied with how democracy is working. Maybe part of this erosion of faith in our government is a cold recognition that the Biden administration plays political games with criminal prosecutions. This must stop. Your Honor, I request you reject the current plea deal. It does not match the severity of his crimes and appears to be preferential treatment from the Biden Justice Department. If you're unable to do that at this time, I then urge you to impose the maximum possible sentence on Mr. Littlejohn. Because of politics, the Biden Justice Department treated him to the lightest possible prosecution. The least he deserves is the heaviest possible sentence. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address the court and speak to you on behalf of the thousands of Mr. Littlejohn's victims. And answering questions anybody has.
Senator, okay. Thanks everybody for being here. I want to thank all my colleagues for being here. If you go back home, in my state, what people are talking about is they're still talking about inflation, and they're talking about they want a border to be secure right now. Those two issues still are the most important issues that people talk about. So all of us have been talking about this border bill for months. The thing that shocked me in the beginning was when McConnell took off the table the fact that we would actually require a lawless Biden administration to secure the border. The only way we knew how to do that is to take, Biden wanted Ukraine aid, so we said, and this was, Ron Johnson put a lot of effort into this, we would say we would have on a monthly allotment of money tied to the numbers of people coming across the border coming down. But it's shocking to me and a lot of other people that McConnell took that off the table. Why this fell apart is because it's what's happened since I've been up here 5 years. Negotiations were done behind closed doors. People that care about this issue, everybody up here, we want a secure border. People care about the issue. We're left in the dark. We started getting into some ideas about the text, and it seems like most of that's all come true. So what do we want? We want a secure border, number one. We don't want to codify Biden's open door policy. We don't want to hurt the next Republican administration from their ability to secure the border, which is what Americans want. And we ought to try to figure out how to do something the House will actually pass. Because also the House has been left out. So Mike Johnson was not part of this. So we received the text finally Sunday night with the plan, again, like whether it's the omnibus, whether it's the China bill, or all these bills, we get the text at the last minute, we're supposed to vote on it very quickly. The only thing I can think of is when people don't tell you information, you generally don't think of positive things about it. So what's our plan to go forward? What we should do is sit down as a conference and say, what's important to us? And then as a conference, we say, if the Democrats want to pass a bill, these are the things that we have to have in there. We don't have to go through an amendment process. We ought to, as a group, come together and say, this is what we ought to do. Now, we're going down the same path with regard to Ukraine. We've had 2 conference meetings in the last 2 weeks. One was on the border, one was on Ukraine. If you listen to conversations, not that it was a majority, but anything but conversations, one, people think we ought to pay for things. People question whether we should, some people think we should do nothing on Ukraine, but some people say, well, at least we shouldn't do humanitarian aid, and we shouldn't pay for their government if we're going to borrow money and pay for it, especially like things like their pension, right? And if we're going to do lethal aid, let's know exactly what we're going to do. But we're in the same position. Part of the supplemental, we have a Ukraine package that we've not been sold on it. We've not had a conversation. Somebody's coming and telling us, hey, this is why we're doing it. This is the plan. This is lethal weapons. This is exactly how we're going to make Ukraine win, okay, and Putin lose. So, and then you look at this. I'm not going to do anything that gives money to Gaza. I'm not. Why? I mean, do you think in the Second World War we're sitting there giving money? I mean, did we feel sorry for people that were part of governments that were trying to kill Americans? Probably did. But they just, Hamas just went in and killed 1,200 Israelis and some Americans, and they still have American hostages. And this bill is going to allow the president to give money to Gazans, which is going to go to Hamas. This is crazy. We have got to figure out a way. We've got to figure out a way to start working together as a conference to do what we believe in. We would like a secure border. I think whether we would all like Ukraine to win and Russia to lose. We might have different views on how that should be done, but why don't we start coming together as a conference to get something done? Let me turn it over to Senator Mike Lee. And the most important one is, why is the Ukraine border more important than the U.S. border? Why is this bill being rushed through with no support for securing our southern border? Ukraine must win and Russia must lose. There's no question that is what is in the best interest of America's national security. And it's why I have said that we should continue to provide lethal aid to Ukraine, paid for with seized Russian assets, so Ukraine could win its war and have a clear plan for how Ukraine will win. We need to answer these questions and be strategic about how we protect our interests, especially as we add to America's $34 trillion worth of debt, soon to hit $35 trillion. The American people will no longer tolerate borrowing billions of dollars to pay the government expenses and salaries of Ukrainian politicians. We are borrowing money to pay for the Ukrainian politicians. It's not a loan, it's just a gift. Nor will U.S. voters tolerate this government having no plan for how Ukraine will win, how U.S. resources will help it win, and how we are making sure that every dollar spent with one mission in mind, defeating Russia. And concern grows when we see that Ukraine has fired another top military official and seems to be struggling to show a clear path to victory. Without more information, we are left to assume the worst, that this entire bill has no clear mission but to accomplish the appearance of unity so that American politicians can fly over with a giant check and deliver hollow speeches about moral righteousness. It doesn't soothe our concerns when we hear the majority whip say on this floor that we must pass this now so that he can go to Munich this week and pontificate about a bill that the Speaker of the House has repeatedly stated that will never become law. Let me just read what the Speaker said today. House Republicans were crystal clear from the very beginning of discussions that any so-called national security supplemental legislation must recognize that national security begins at our own border. The House acted 10 months ago to help enact transformative policy change by passing the Secure Our Border Act. And since then, including today, the Senate has failed to meet the moment. The Senate did the right thing last week by rejecting the Ukraine, Taiwan, Gaza, Israel immigration legislation due to its insufficient border provisions, and should have gone back to the drawing board to amend the current bill to include real border security provisions that will actually help end the ongoing catastrophe. Instead, the Senate's foreign aid bill is silent on the most pressing issue facing our country. The mandate of national security supplemental legislation was to secure Americans' own border before sending additional foreign aid around the world. Is what the American people demand and deserve. Now, in the absence of having received any single border policy change from the Senate, the House will have to continue to work on its own will on these important matters. America deserves better than the Senate's status quo. So what we're going to do, this bill is going to be rushed through with no amendments. There will not be an amendment on this bill. So a bill that was negotiated in the dark by a few people, changed, only a few people knew that, is now going to pass. And the Speaker of the House has repeatedly stated that it's never going to become law. This bill accomplishes nothing, and if my colleagues were actually serious about aiding Ukraine in its war against Russia's invasion, they would work with us in good faith, sit down with the Speaker of the House and House leaders, and produce a bill that can pass here and in the House. As I said, I want Ukraine to win and I want Russia to lose. But that does not mean I am or should be willing to simply accept any offer thrown down by the Democrats that they claim but cannot prove will advance that cause, all while America is being invaded as a result of our open border. So if you're a general and your left flank is being invaded and you do nothing to shore that up, you get fired and you lose the battle. We are being invaded. I will not accept anything that ignores the most urgent threat to U.S. national security, Joe Biden's wide-open southern border. This should not need to be said here on the floor of the United States Senate, but securing America's border is more important than securing the border of any other country. We represent America. We should be able to do both. And frankly, the fact that we aren't using revenue generated from seized Russian assets to pay for Ukraine aid is ridiculous. But that's how things work here. Your federal government cannot continue to stroke massive checks to borrow more money while providing zero accountability to the American people. The people of Florida are sick of this. I'm sick of it. I think about all Americans are sick of this. The deal has always been Ukraine aid for border security. Not immigration policy, but real border security today. Florida families are feeling the impact of this administration's lawless border policies each and every day, as deadly fentanyl criminals, terrorists, human traffickers pour across Biden's open borders. In 2021, how many children, 14 to 18-year-olds, died of fentanyl? Over 1,000, 1,145. That's a classroom of students dying each and every week. In 2022, I heard from a mom in Kissimmee, Florida, whose son was in the Air Force. He came home to visit her and surprised her on Mother's Day weekend. He visited an old friend who he didn't know had begun dealing drugs. The friend convinced the young man to take a Xanax, which was unknowingly laced with fentanyl, and the mom found her son dead. Can you imagine? It's heartbreaking. There are more stories like this all over the country. I don't understand why Joe Biden doesn't care. When over 100,000 Americans died from drug overdoses in 2021, 72% of those from opioids like fentanyl. Families in Florida and every state across the nation are being torn apart by these deadly drugs coming over the border. Think about how many families are being just torn apart as a result of this open border. My Democrat colleagues seem to finally be acknowledging this crisis on TV, but they're not willing to stand up to this president and force him to do what we all know is right: secure the border today. I can't imagine why. It's obvious to everyone that the invasion of our southern border is what Biden wants. Your attempt to brush Secretary Mayorkas' impeachment trial under the rug is disgusting and unacceptable. It is truly unprecedented, violates Senate rules, and is possibly unconstitutional. The House of Representatives adopted 2 articles of impeachment against Secretary Mayorkas. Let me quote for you. Throughout his tenure as Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro N. Mayorkas has repeatedly violated laws enacted by Congress regarding immigration and border security. In large part because of his unlawful conduct, millions of aliens have illegally entered the United States on an annual basis, with many unlawfully remaining in the United States. Alejandro N. Mayorkas has knowingly made false statements and knowingly obstructed lawful oversight of the Department of Homeland Security, principally to obfuscate the results of his willful and systemic refusal to comply with the law. Now, it is the constitutional duty of the U.S. Senate to conduct an impeachment trial to determine if Secretary Mayorkas should be removed from office based on those articles of impeachment. I want to stress this again. Never in the history of the U.S. Senate has such a procedural move been attempted to completely avoid an impeachment trial. Senate Democrats' efforts to avoid fulfilling their constitutional duty to conduct this trial are just the latest attack by the left against our democratic process and institution. Senate Democrats want to eliminate the filibuster. They want to radically change the U.S. Supreme Court, and now they want to trash the impeachment process. This is a disturbing series of direct attacks on our democratic institutions. My colleagues and I have called on Senate leadership to conduct a thorough trial. I've also personally called on Vice President Kamala Harris, urging her to fulfill her constitutional duty to serve as the presiding officer of Secretary Mayorkas' trial. Her appointment as President Biden's, quote, border czar only makes her role in the Mayorkas impeachment trial more critical. President Biden, his administration have created a crisis at our southern border. Secretary Mayorkas, a complete puppet for this lawless administration, has the audacity to come falsely testify before Senate and House committees that the border is secure. Not just once, but multiple times. Mayorkas has lied under oath in committee that our border is secure. He's lying to the American public. He's not taking the action needed to defend the homeland by securing the border or upholding the law. That's his job, and he's simply not doing it. Our nation is reeling from the consequences of Mayorkas' failures. Our nation is a more dangerous place because of Secretary Mayorkas' failures. He's allowing criminals, drugs, terrorists, others into our communities. These are real consequences, and each victim has a name. Real Americans, here to live their dream, are being killed. Real American families are being torn apart by vicious crimes and deadly drugs because we have a wide-open border. When Biden and Mayorkas refuse to enforce federal law to secure the border, and innocent Americans like Laken Riley are paying the ultimate price for his failures. 10 million people have illegally crossed, and 6 million have been let into our country. There have been sexual assaults and murders committed by illegal aliens all across the country. Even in Florida, where a young man was recently killed, the man charged for his death is an illegal alien. I don't get it. I do not understand why my Democrat colleagues don't care. They don't care about 70,000 people dying of fentanyl overdose. They don't care about vicious crimes. They don't care about terrorists being let go in our country. But Senate Democrats are saying they simply do not care. They're using every power they have to ignore this crisis while innocent Americans die and keep Congress from holding Mayorkas accountable. The proof is not just in this disgraceful effort to dismiss the impeachment trial. Let's remember what Democrats have voted against. Democrats voted against a bill to stop illegal aliens from getting on a commercial flight with no verifiable ID. Think about that. You have to have an ID. They don't. Democrats voted against deporting illegal aliens who hurt police. The people that are here to take care of us. And Democrats voted against the Laken Riley Act, which simply requires, it's a simple act, simply requires ICE to take illegal aliens who commit crimes into custody before tragedies strike. Does Biden hope that millions of immigrants will vote for him? Many of us probably want to allow illegal immigrants to vote. They even voted to allow the census to keep counting illegal aliens. It's because they want sanctuary cities and states to have more electoral votes and representation in Congress. Not from Americans, but from illegal aliens. That's the future Democrats want. Biden has dismantled, he's intentionally dismantled every ounce of border security that Trump put in place and completely undermined our immigration system. And Mayorkas has done absolutely nothing to stop it. Mayorkas has clearly been derelict in his duties. He has neglected to protect the homeland, his job. He's allowed criminals to come into our country, into each and all of our communities, drugs to flow into our country. When I talk to Floridians, they're terrified. They're concerned about their family safety because of who and what is coming across the southern border and into each and all of our communities. Mayorkas may simply be a puppet for the administration, but he is fully responsible for his negligence and failure to do his job. Mayorkas needs to be either resign or needs to have the full and thorough trial that we are constitutionally obligated to conduct, as the American people, through their representatives, voted for. We must have an administration and DH secretary that is willing to secure the border, not ignore failure that is killing our citizens. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for being here. Secretary Granholm, the Biden administration announced that they were going to pause pending LNG export projects, which seems like the stupidest decision I can imagine. So in my state, we export LNG. We have through our ports. We put a lot of money when I was governor into our ports. We export it. And so if you look around the world, they want our LNG. We've got a war going on in Europe. We don't want people dependent on Russia. So we're exporting to Europe. We're exporting to Asia, right? The people, the bad guys are the ones that produce the oil, a lot of them, Russia, Iran, right? So if we don't do the exports, right? So where do our allies buy it? They have to buy more from Russia. They have to buy more from Iran, okay? So Iran's invaded Ukraine. Iran is trying to destroy Israel. So this makes it, one, economically, it hurts my state. But number two, from the standpoint of what's going on in the world, this is the stupidest decision ever. So can you explain it to me?
Yeah, just to clarify a point, this is a pause. It is not a halt.
Why would
And
we
all-
pause?
So that we can evaluate, as we do and are required to do, what is in the public interest. We do a study every few years. Right now is when we're doing this study to determine whether the enormous increase
Did Russia
in
pause Ukraine?
authorizations.
Did Russia pause going into Ukraine? Has
determine-
Iran paused?
All of the current exports are still happening. All of the current authorizations, which goes up to 48 billion cubic feet, are all proceeding.
Did you pause
The-
new pending export
Pending,
projects?
but
Yes.
everything that is, we are currently the largest exporter of liquefied natural gas, and we will remain
Did
the
you pause
largest
it?
exporter
Yes.
of liquefied natural gas.
First off-
It is a temporary pause.
Do you
so
understand
that
what
we
you're
can
doing to our
study
allies?
The impacts.
Secretary,
We've
wait,
talked with
slow
our
down.
allies.
What are you doing to our allies? Okay.
We've talked with our allies about this. They have very well understand that this is a temporary pause while we do an analysis of what the
But
impacts are in the
what would
United
the analysis
States.
be? What do you have to now?
I'm happy to tell you.
Stop and think about it for a
Let
second. The world is at war. They need our energy.
And they will
And you're
continue to get
telling-
it, sir.
You're telling them, no, we're going to slow it down.
No, that's not what we're telling them.
That's what a pause means.
No, a pause means on future future approvals. We have so much approved that we are well saturating the globe if those authorizations are built out. We have 14 billion cubic feet of capacity right now. That makes us the largest in the world right now.
What would you have to
Another
study?
12 billion cubic feet that are under construction.
What do you have to study?
None of that is stopping.
Wait,
It is
what do you have
only
to
a
study?
pause for a study
Okay, what do you
that
have to
will be
study?
completed in months.
Okay, what do you have to study?
Okay.
What's there to study?
There are
we
four
want to
things.
do. We want to sell.
There are four things
LNG.
we're studying. To be able
Pardon?
to answer your question, there are four things we're studying. One is, what is the impact domestically on our manufacturers if we export almost half of our capacity for producing natural gas? What's the impact in terms of cost? Number one. Number two, what is the impact, the life cycle analysis on the export of LNG? Number three, what is the impact on our allies overseas? What is the demand we're going to be seeing to make sure that they are well supplied and that they have the energy that they need? And
You heard any manufacturer call you and say, "Gosh, I'm worried because we're selling LNG overseas"?
there are a lot of domestic concerns. In fact, we've gotten letters on both sides of the aisle here about what does it mean for costs at home if you export almost half of what you currently produce. What is the impact from a supply and demand point? It's a question, and that's we're
You
only
think we
doing.
should export nothing?
We're going.
I mean, should we do that with everything we export?
As we authorize massive amounts of exports, we need to know what is the impact on America, on our American
With that
manufacturers,
analysis,
on our homeowners. What is the cost?
Secretary, with that analysis, you think we ought to put pauses on exporting anything else we manufacture in this
The
country?
reason why we're doing this is because there's been such an extraordinary increase in authorizations. When we did our last study, we were only exporting 4 billion cubic feet. Now we have authorized 48 billion. Not all of that will be built, but the point is we need to go eyes open to see what is the impact on us at home as well as on our allies, and to have our labs do a modeling to make sure that we follow the science and understand what the impacts are before we start to approve a whole bunch more.
So if you were head of commerce, then you would start pausing exports of manufacturing goods because you think, man, that's going to cause the cost of manufacturing goods for Americans to go up. It makes zero sense, and it's having a dramatic impact on my state. So I think you made a horrible decision, and I hope you'll change.
Thank you, Senator Scott.
Secretary Mayorkas, you're the first cabinet official to be impeached in our country's history. I think it's a sad first for our nation, not because this wasn't warranted, but because it was completely warranted by your catastrophic failure that has created a wide open border. I personally fully support what the House did. I think I've been honest with you that how I view your job performance. I don't believe not just once, but multiple times you lied under oath that that the border was secure. It's not. I think that's clearly a lie. And it's a lie that our nation is reeling for the consequences of your failures. I've talked to a lot of people at CBP and people at ICE, and they're doing the best they can, but your horrific policies make their jobs impossible, and they've been clear with me about that. Here's when I talk to people about you, they don't get it. They say, does he care about the thousands of Americans who have died from drug overdoses because of your lawless policies? Does he care about the Americans who have been killed and viciously raped by illegal aliens that you and President Biden have invited into this country? They say, do you care about the devastation that could happen at the hands of the hundreds of terrorists that have been let into our country? Does he care that even the FBI director is concerned about the terrorists you and President Biden have allowed into America? At my state, they're furious. They don't think you care at all. Just about everybody I talk to believes that America is a way more dangerous place because you have allowed criminals, drugs, terrorists, and other dangerous people into our communities. Just this week, the House Select Committee on the CCP released a damning report on the fentanyl you've let pour into America through the southern border. Here's how the AP reported on the committee's report. The article said, quote, the Chinese government not only subsidizes the manufacture of precursor chemicals, but the report says it is a thwarted investigation into illicit manufacturers by warning the targets of investigation when U.S. law enforcement has sent a formal request for assistance. Investigators said multiple current and former federal agents have described the notification of targets, leading those targets to revamp operation and make it harder to detect their activities. I can't imagine if I was sitting in your position, I'd like to hear this, but the government of Communist China seems to know that because of your policies and wide open border, you and President Biden have created that they get to do whatever they want. Now, what we know is Communist China wants to destroy the United States, and they want to murder thousands of Americans with fentanyl. Communist China has poisoned our nation and taken the lives of more than 70,000 Americans each and every year. I assume you know this, but I personally can't say anything that shows that you care about it. There are real consequences to your failure to secure the border, and every victim's got a name. Unfortunately, real Americans are being killed, families are being torn apart by vicious crimes and deadly drugs because we have a wide open border, and we do. Last time on the Senate floor, I spoke about one of the Americans who was murdered by Communist China's fentanyl that the cartels are pushing into our country every day. Name's Ashley Dunn. Ashley's mother said that Ashley was murdered by your failure to stop fentanyl from pouring into the United States. Other innocent Americans like Laken Riley are also paying the ultimate price for your failures. As we all know, Laken was brutally murdered, and an illegal alien has been charged with that heinous crime. Your agency just confirmed that this monster was in the U.S. after being paroled by DHS. Not for humanitarian reasons, but because you claimed you didn't have detention capacity. That's not how the law is supposed to work. What you did is against the law, and if you followed the law, Laken Riley would still be alive. If you look at the chart, it seems like must be over 10 million people have illegally crossed, 6 million have allowed to stay here, and you've rolled out the red carpet for them. There have been sexual assaults and murders committed by illegal aliens all over the country. Even in Florida, where just recently a young man was killed. The man charged with his death is an illegal alien. So let me go back to what I was saying in the beginning. The Republican majority in the House is now, they voted to impeach you for violating your oath of office. Whether you believe that was right or wrong, that happened. You should then have a trial to make your case. But unlike what happened in 2019 when Democrats alone voted to impeach the president and Republicans controlled the Senate, Majority Leader Chuck Schumer decided to deny you the ability to defend yourself in a trial. It seems to me that Schumer didn't want to let you defend yourself in trial for one of a couple of reasons. He's either acting out of pure political interest to protect his incumbent members who don't want to talk about your record and the wide open border you have created and all the crime, drugs, and illegal immigration it's allowing, or he's terrified of a trial exposing your failure to a degree that acquittal would be extremely painful for Democrats to explain to the American public. Here's what I don't understand. Just a few weeks ago, Senate Democrats all voted against a bill to stop illegal aliens from getting on a commercial flight with no verifiable ID. This is shocking considering that a recent report identified that in 2023 alone, you approved the transit of 320,000 inadmissible illegal aliens to 43 U.S. airports, pre-approved by DHS through the CBP-1 app, many of them going through my home state of Florida on commercial flights. Democrats voted against deporting illegal aliens who hurt police, like the violent attack on uniformed police officers in New York City by a group of illegal migrants, some of whom with known gang affiliations who unlawfully entered the country under your watch. And Democrats voted against the Laken Riley Act, which simply requires ICE to take illegal aliens who commit crimes into custody before tragedies strike. So it seems to me that Democrats have no problem voting to keep this border crisis going, and it's a crisis, whether you want to acknowledge it or not, and blocking every attempt that Republicans make to stop the crime and secure the border. But when it comes to you, they shut everything down and don't allow you to speak. You seem like a smart guy. You're a former prosecutor. Sure, you know how to handle yourself and defend your actions. I'm surprised you didn't read what they said about you in the House. Surely you believe you have a case to present to the American people on why you should not be found guilty. But you didn't get that chance, and Senate Democrats are setting a new precedent. They're destroying the rules and traditions of the Senate to keep you quiet. Do you think you're being silenced because Democrats are terrified of your record and unable to defend you, or because they don't trust you?
Neither, Senator. Senator Hall, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, let's just
Hi. I'm here because I've known Donald Trump a long time. I knew him before I was governor. I consider him a friend. And what he is going through is just despicable. It's a crime in this country to use the court system to go after your political opponents. What's happening in this courtroom is clearly criminal. It's been led by political thugs. Look, I've had experience with this. Back in the 90s, I was the lead opponent to Hillary Clinton's health care. After it was defeated, she used the Justice Department to go after me and my company. This can't continue. What's happening to this president is wrong. We're watching all over the country. We're watching all these cases that are going after somebody simply because he's a political opponent of Joe Biden. Now, I'm proud of him for standing up for all of us, because guess what? It's not going to end with him. They can go after any one of us if they want to, and you do not have the resources to do it. They can go after the former president, they can go after you. Now let's look at who's involved in doing this. The lead prosecutor was the number 3 person that the Biden Justice Department. The judge's daughter is a political operative and raises money for Democrats. You've got the lead prosecutor's wife is a significant donor to Democrats, and I think to Biden. So this is just a bunch of Democrats saying, we want to make sure that Donald Trump can't talk. You know, they've got a gag order, so he can't go campaign. They've got him holed up in a courtroom, so Joe Biden can go campaign, but Donald Trump can't. This has to stop. Look, we know that President Biden can't win this election fair and square. He has nothing to run on. And we know President Trump has a record. He secured the border. He had a great economy. We weren't at war. So that's why this is happening. Joe Biden knows and the Democrats know that he cannot win. Joe Biden cannot win this election. I'll be glad to answer any questions. This is nothing about storming Daniels. Let's remember what this case is about. They're trying to prosecute this president for how an expense was the records were done. That's all there was. It's nothing about her. No.
Did it have anything to do with the gag order?
No, I'm fed up. I watched what happened to me and my company. I've watched what's happened. I've talked to business people over the years, what's happened to them when you have political persecution. And now what I've watched what President Trump has done with all these cases. This is just simply, they don't want this guy on the ballot. I mean, they've tried to kick him off the ballot in states. Now they're trying to put him in jail. They've tried everything they can because they know they can't beat him.
Last question. Do you believe that it was a legal anti-election Donald Trump campaign?
Let's remember what this is about. This is about they're trying to prosecute this guy for how something was recorded, and that's all it is. This is just pure political persecution.
Will you be joining Trump on the campaign trail?
Senator Scott, you're recognized for your questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me just follow up with what Senator Cornyn just asked. Do you know who makes the drone that the Secret Service uses?
That Secret Service uses?
Yeah, the one that that didn't work. Who's the manufacturer? Is it an American-made manufacturer?
I believe it is, Senator. I'll get you the. We'll provide that to you in a queue, sir.
So we talked about this the other day. There's not in our very few times in history do our presidents get shot at. So you know that this is something that the American public is very interested in. So as Senator Johnson said, there's a lot of questions being asked. I was at church Sunday, and 3 people came up to me and asked me if there was a second shooter. So there's all this information that's not you guys are not responding to. When I was governor of Florida, I had 2 mass shootings. I had the Pulse nightclub shooting. I had the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting, and we did 2 or 3 times a day, local, state, and federal law enforcement, FBI, everybody involved. We answered questions. What I asked you the other day is, why aren't you doing that? What you've allowed, what both of you have allowed, you've allowed the public to assume the negative. And so, which I don't get. I think you should have been doing, and I think you guys should have been doing all along, at least once a day press conferences. I think that you've got to tell the public what's going on. Having a hearing is really nice, but how often are we going to do this? You're clearly not going to do it here for another month and a half. So I asked you the other day, why aren't you doing press conferences? And are you going to commit to doing press conferences? I think what you all said the other day, you're going to ask Secretary Mayorkas and Director Wray if you guys could do those daily press conferences and start giving the public information. And what's the answer?
So, Senator, that's why, one, I'm here today. I'm here today to provide information and answer those questions. And we are moving towards doing more frequent releases of information. And we are willing to do that press conference. And once we get through this hearing today, we are going to, in all likelihood, do one this week.
Okay, so what's the commitment to the public that you're going to do press conference? Are you going to, it's what, 17 days? The information, we are sitting 17 days into this, and I'm getting asked questions that I can't believe are true, but the public believes it's true. So what you all are doing is you're ruining your reputation, you impact the integrity of the federal government. It makes no sense to me. So are you going to commit to, are you going to do it once a month? Both and the FBI, the same thing, not just you. What did Director Wray say? Did he say you couldn't do it?
Senator, if I may jump in here. First, thank you all for your guidance in this regard. And in fact, we haven't done something every day, no doubt about that. But we're focused from the FBI side on the investigation in part as we laid out here today. We actually, based on your guidance, we did a media engagement, not a stand-up type press conference just yesterday, and laid out in full everything that I've shared here, and even beyond that, just in the interest of time. But we are, because of the intense interest in this and the implications and the national importance, we've literally provided everything through media and through journalists and here, all of the information that we have derived from the investigation thus far. We remain committed to do that in full, answering any and all questions and sharing any and all information we obtain.
Do you guys realize the value of going in front of the press and answering all their questions? You realize that if you don't do it that way, everything gets filtered. You get to put out all the information, and you should be providing. You should be every day say, this is what we know now. This is like Senator Johnson put together a timeline. You should have put together a timeline. You should immediately put out, this is what we know right now, and this is what we don't know. Like you've said, you don't know how the gun got up there, right? You've said it, but why have? That should have been out all along. Say, we're looking at it. It doesn't make any sense. We've done this. We've done this. We've done this. If you do, I just don't get it. Why what you're doing? You're ruining. I've said this about the FBI. The people that work at the FBI, people who work at Secret Service, they're great people. You're a black hole. You lose the support of the American public because people don't believe you're being direct with them. So I completely disagree with your approach. I just want to finish. I've got like everybody else. I said I did a letter July 18th. I haven't gotten any answers yet. I want to put it into the record, and I'd love to get the answers to this because this is what the public is asking for. They want more information. They want to know what happened, who's going to be held accountable, and how we're going to make sure this never happens again. Thank you.
Without objection, it'll be entered in the record.